Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, follow me on Instagram at Rising Woman Leaders and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. I'm here today with Jillian Anderson, a return guest on the Rising Woman Leaders podcast. She is a writer, a healer, and also a business coach for healers. We're going to be talking today about everything that's transpired in her business in these last couple of years since we've talked. So much has happened, and I'm really excited to have her here. Thanks for being here, Jillian.
Thanks so much for having me, Meredith.
Yeah. So I'd love to dive in with just what's been happening recently for you in your business. I know that recently you had a launch that didn't go as planned, and you've been learning a lot, experimenting, learning different things in your business. I wonder if you want to just start with maybe even just a little background on what you do, how your healing journey has evolved into what you're doing now, and then just tell us about what you've been learning with your launches lately and how failure has actually been propelling you into greater depths.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. Well, my work has gone through an evolution. I think like everyone, when they get online or when they step out in a new way and they start bringing their ideas and their visions to life, you go through different incarnations or different chapters. And well, to give you some backstory, I've always been a writer. I've always been a healer. I've been in body work for 10 years now. So when I stepped into the online space in 2014, I knew I wanted to continue helping women, enter more deeply into their bodies. And so I went through this whole process of how does my in-person work translate to online? And how can I help women through the online world with something like, coming deeper into your body? And I got started and, I guess I'm starting from the very beginning. I got started and I created a free ebook for women, teaching them how to get started with the Jade Egg Practice, which felt like to me the most tangible way that I could help a woman get in touch with her reproductive anatomy and get in touch with her body. And so I went through these different progressions in the online world. So I was retailing the Jade Eggs, and I had, a whole email sequence set up guiding women through a journey around that. And then I created I was taking one-on-one clients, and then I created Permission to Prosper, the program. And that was the fusion of the connection between, the feelings of abundance and wealth and our money reality with our experience of embodiment and how we are in our pelvis, how we inhabit our pelvis. Okay. So the connection between money and sexuality. So I launched that program. I launched it 4 times successfully. The first time I launched it, it was really successful. And I didn't know that it was successful until I bounced it off of someone who I was working with. And she was like, for your first launch, this is not normal. And so, and just to give the details, like the numbers, it was a 5-figure launch, my first launch. I went on to have low 5 figures. So I had just crossed 5 figures, just for context. And that was with an email list of the email list grew when I was doing the opt-in So it was like, it started around like 500 people, and then it went up to like through 700 and 800 people on that particular list that I launched to. So with all the numbers and everything, it was just like an overwhelming success. So I went on to do that 4 times consecutively with that particular program. And, have helped women, have gotten, incredible feedback from the women who've walked through the program of like, their experience with it. And then on my I'm going to say fifth or sixth launch of this, I had just like an epic fail. And it did not do well at all. And it's interesting. So to give a little backstory of why it was a fail, each launch that I did of the program there wasn't a lot of expenses. It was very much all my own energy. So the first time I did the program, I taught it live. I did a sales page for it. And women purchased it, and then I taught it live. So what that looks like is you sell something that there's an interest for, that your people in your community are really wanting and are really connecting with you, about. And then you create the offering, and then you sell the offering, and then you facilitate the offering. So it was no expenses there. Even in my time and energy, it was minimal. It was like, let me just create the container, sell the offering, and then the women will come. The next time I launched it, it was even better than that, because I had now walked through the program and I had recorded all of the modules. And so it was even easier. So then the amount of work or effort was even less, because it was like, okay, now you have all the launch materials, like for instance, emails, that they work. And now you have your social media posts written, that they got engagement. Now you have the program recorded. Now you have the sales page. Like, all you have to do is promote the same materials. So that was like the best success there, because it was like, oh, like, look at this wonderful experience of selling this creation that I created. And I don't actually have to do day-to-day work for this to help someone else, or for this to work in someone else's life, or for someone else to receive this, and for me to receive a financial, like, money in the exchange for that. So it was like, oh, I get to do that. I get to, create something and make money from it, even though my day-to-day energy, my here and now energy isn't in it. So I went on to do that. And so each launch, it was like, less and less work, actually. Everything was like a well-oiled kind of a groove. And I know I just started diving right into like the stats and stuff. So, yeah. So then one of the launches was an accidental launch, which happened right as Anastasia Holland and I were preparing to lead the retreat in Tulum that we led in January. So I'm preparing to leave for the retreat, and my email sequence for Permission to Prosper just like turns on. So everybody starts getting the email to this, like, to the video, which I'll call the opt-in. Everyone gets a link to that, which in that video, I pitch Permission to Prosper. So all these sales emails are going out, letting people know they can purchase Permission to Prosper. And this all just happened accidentally. And so people start emailing me like, oh, I can't wait to sign up. I'm signing up. Or I saw your video and I'm like preparing to go leave for Tulum. And I'm like, this is just like, what is this? And so this was the ultimate. This was so funny, because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with it. It already turned on. I can't take it back. Yeah. Like, people are already getting these promotions. Like, I have to just go with this. And I went with it, and I did another 5-figure launch, and it was totally like an accidental launch. It was like, okay, like, and there was nothing that I needed to do in Tulum. I was present with the retreat. That because the program was recorded, everyone could just get the material, and they were well taken care of. And I was just facilitating the retreat. but I had this extra income, and it was so nice that I wasn't expecting. So that was like the culmination of that was just the good note I left off on when I went to go launch it again in May. And I went to launch it again in May, and I actually decided, all right, you know what? I want to improve the program. I want to hire a community management person to manage the community so that I don't feel super responsible to always be answering Facebook comments. And so I don't feel I feel like everyone is really cared for in an even more effective and better way. And so I hired for a community management position. I moved from one email service provider to another email service provider. So I moved from MailChimp to ActiveCampaign. So it was an investment in time and energy for my assistant Marie to take everything and move it over. Essentially, I was spending money to make everything better. Yeah. So I was investing. I was like, all right, we'll do community management. And I was basing all of this on past results, like, you know, we're going to do X amount and then some, and yay, you know. Long story short, that launch, essentially I broke even. Like it just basically paid for itself. And I was so, I was like, man, how did I fail? Like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? It went down this whole spiral of like, you know, that thing that happens for women where they like have a failure and they're like, maybe I'm on the wrong path. Like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. I see this with my clients, and I go through this myself, where if something doesn't flow, quote unquote flow, or go the right way, you think like, I'm on the wrong path. Like, you know, you pray, give me a sign, show me what to do now. Like, what is it? But ultimately, I think that I don't think we have to go there so soon. I think what is interesting for me is just in reflection was like, okay, you had a failure. It was really humbling for me. It was like, oh, it's not just, I don't really know how to explain it, but it was really humbling. And I'm actually just coming out of another launch that didn't go as well as I would have liked it to go either. So it's interesting because the energy and the feeling that I feel today is that failure, or the experience of failure, it's actually just a part of it. And this sounds so typical or cliche, but it's like, you know, the only thing that I feel, the thing that I've been feeling in the last couple of weeks after that launch, and then this last launch that I did for a different offering, was what ensures that you create your vision is that you just don't stop creating. Like, you just don't stop. You just continue. You persist. You rest, and you take breaks. And of course, you ask for guidance, but you don't just stop and say, oh, this means I shouldn't do this anymore. Or, oh, this means it's the wrong path. Or, oh, this, you know. So.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. I'm reflecting back on the first group program I ever led. It was called Vision, and it was for a group of women to meditate for 40 days. And I had like weekly materials and everything. And the first time I launched it, had like it was very affordable. It was like $275. And I think like 26 women signed up. Like I was expecting maybe like 10. And it just like, it went really big, and I was so surprised, and I was like, yes, I'm on the right path. This is happening. And then got a little bit, a few months later when I decided to launch it again, I put in a ton of new videos and effort and all of that to make it like even better, new photos and all of that. I doubled the price of the program, and I got exactly half the people. So it was like, ended up making about the same, but then, all the extra effort and energy I put into it, it was just interesting to see that that was the result.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we just have to keep trying and see what works. So one thing that comes to my mind is that, well, maybe you just like there's this continual when you're creating the same offering again and again, there's usually this continual need to keep reaching new and new people, more new and new people. Have you do you think about that and factoring that in, and maybe that was just part of why it didn't go off in the same way? Or maybe the other thing I think about is that we are constantly evolving. And sometimes I don't feel like my energy is in it in the same way as like the first couple times I do something. And so then it's like sometimes that energy behind an offering is not the same as the first few times you do it.
Yes. Yeah. Two really good things to reflect on and think about. I think the first piece, to touch on the first piece, it absolutely, I've realized, and it's something that when you're in the online world and you're reaching people online, you hear it all the time, like your audience growth is in proportion to your income. So, reaching new people and connecting with new people is in proportion to your earning potential. And especially if it depends on what your model is and how you're pricing things, but especially if you have lower priced or lower tier offerings, the juice behind those offerings is reach X amount of people at this lower price. So yeah, that definitely was a huge part of it. And actually, when I talked to Anastasia Holland, she was like, well, this makes sense for your list, for your email list, Jillian. Like, it just makes sense. And it was so good. It's so good to have friends who are in the same space, because you're like, what's going on? Am I not living my life purpose? And your friend is like, actually, your email list, in proportion to the amount of times you launch that particular program, it makes a lot of sense. You probably need to focus on audience growth. So it's just like that snap out of that whole like downward spiral that I needed. And then in terms of the energy behind the offering, that's a good thing to reflect on. And I don't, for Permission to Prosper, I definitely feel like my heart is still really, I'm still really aligned with that material and that work. I mean, it's really, it feels still really relevant, and I feel like people are still around me who still really need it. And I meet women who are working on their money stuff, and I'm like, oh, like, let's talk about it. Like, I want to talk about it. And so I think it's still really relevant for me personally, but I do think that's something really important for everyone to reflect on who has offerings, or maybe has an offering that feels like it could be pruned or trimmed, or that energy could be pulled back.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about evolving and creating new offerings. And sometimes we feel like we need to burn away the past self in order to create something totally new. And that actually, that you had mentioned that you don't need to do that. And I wonder if you could speak more about that, of like integrating your past versions of yourself. Not neat, because I definitely have gone through times and I'm like, who was that person? Just gonna like totally cut it out, let it go, totally new start. And then later on, I usually reintegrate, like, oh, actually, I really like that part of myself, and bring it back in. But what's your experience been with that?
This is a great question, and actually brings up someone else I want to reference, who's Rachel Webb, who I love her work, and I've worked with Rachel before. And if you guys aren't familiar with Rachel, go check her out. But so I heard this story Rachel Webb told once about how she was doing acupuncture work in California, and she burned all of her client records and like moved on to the next chapter of her life. Like, she knew she had to burn all the files. She didn't want to do the work anymore in person. She was ready for what's next. Well, that always stayed with me. And when I was like ready to go bigger online, I actually gave my massage table away. I burned all my files too, like 30 case studies, really great case studies for abdominal, pelvic, uterine massage that I worked we did some work. I like burned all these files. I was like, I gave my massage table, my $1,200 massage table away. That's like the most beautiful massage table you could have. Like I had it. I gave it away to someone in the name of burning my old self and moving on to the next chapter. And I don't really recommend it. Like, I definitely feel like, yeah, we need to quote unquote declutter. We need to archive certain aspects of our lives. But for me, I think I was moving too quick. I was like, yeah, this is what I want. I'll do what it takes, which is burn everything and like give your table away. I still don't understand why my partner Aaron didn't just stop me and say like, don't do that. But that's not his responsibility. So. But now he knows. If she gets crazy, like if she gets out of hand, like I'm going to tell her not to. So anyway, I had this whole thing about how I needed to do that. And now I feel like I'm a lot slower to do that. And I'm actually doing a lot better job of holding the different, like the multi-passionate elements of myself, because I'm a healer, but I'm also super into business, and I'm into helping women strategize their income with offerings that they love. But I'm a healer and I help women with their physical structure. And like, I have these different elements of myself, or these different, aspects, and I'm doing a better job of holding them all and not, neglecting one or like pushing one aside because it needs to be one thing. I have another part to this question that I want to answer, which it actually has to do with income. And so when I was first building up the Jade Egg business, like the retailing, I had gotten the Jade Egg sales up to about $6,000 a month. And that was cool because it went from just like a sales here and there to up to $6,000 a month in retailing the Jade Eggs. And I did that through a simple email nurture sequence, like I'll call it a sales funnel, but it's like a nurture sequence of emails that educates people about, well, this is what problem this solves. This is how to use it. So basically you're giving your potential client all the information they need to make a decision about whether that's the right investment for them. And so I had this whole like sales sequence set up for me working around the clock, and I didn't need to do anything. It's just if a woman signs up, she's in the sequence, and that was making sales. And so when I went to shift gears and do the program, I actually turned off that sequence and then like focused on the program. And if someone was a wise person, like a person who had gone through different elements of business, was above me watching me, they would have said, don't turn off your thing, just start another thing and keep that on too.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, there was a like abundance stuff too, like around like, oh, am I allowed to have this income and this income and this income, or these different sources? So I think for me, there was just an expansion that needed to happen around like, oh yeah, that can make that money. And then you can do this other thing that'll make money, and you can get that running. And then you can do another thing that makes money automatically. You don't have to just turn one thing off and then start another. But I didn't have a wise person telling me that. And I ended up having to realize that myself. So now I'm just really mindful of like, oh no, that's working. Let it run. Like, okay, that's working. Just let it run. You don't have to burn that, or like, you don't have to throw it, I don't know. You don't have to archive it to move on to what's next.
Yeah, that's really wise and needed. I think that will probably help people, navigating different offerings in their business, that we don't need to throw everything away when we start a new project. I wanted to ask you about selling what people are asking you of versus selling like what's in your heart, like offering, what's most exciting for you versus what people are kind of asking you for. What are your thoughts on that and finding that balance?
That's a great question, Meredith. And I feel like the answer is going to formulate as I process. I think that the excitement and the juice of your heart and your body, and that's so vital and so important in the person fully receiving what you're doing. If you're not excited by it, the person on the other end is going to feel there's something, they're not going to feel that life force or that juice or that like energy. And I almost feel like there can be kind of a transmission of sorts between our offerings and the people receiving them. There's an energetic transference happening. So that juice has to be present. With that said, there does need to be a way that the offering is positioned effectively to solve a very real problem that the person has. So I see a lot of women with their offerings, naming their offering maybe something not very clear or specific, or not just clearly describing the results the person is going to experience. So in my mind, it's like, yeah, the juice needs to be there, the excitement needs to be there, but the offering needs to be positioned and packaged and effectively communicate in a way that the client understands, oh my gosh, this is for me, and this is going to be a solution to something I'm going through. With that said, Permission to Prosper is a good example, because on the outside, it's like, let's work on your money stuff. On the inside, it's like, what's going on in your sex life? Like, what's going on in your, orgasm and all these different things. So it's positioned in a way where a woman understands, this is what my challenge is right now, but the solution is kind of like on the inside.
Yeah. I think that I've talked to a lot of women who have a client base that is more mainstream. Maybe they're doing health coaching, and it's like focusing on a specific problem that people have. Maybe we're going to do a cleanse for thyroid disorder things and helping people learn how to eat to support their thyroid. But then once they're actually in the program, there's a lot more of the like energetics and things that a lot of people may not off the bat think like, that's what I want to buy, but is part of the process of getting you there.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's our job as facilitators, and it's our job to know that stuff, like what the steps are and what the client needs. And to facilitate that behind the scenes, if that's the way that it'll work and that it reaches people, then that's effective, and it works.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on in-person versus online? I know that you've done a lot of online work, and you also led a retreat this year. What have you been feeling about that?
Well, let's see. How can I answer that question? So I feel like there's a beautiful opportunity in the online world to reach people who aren't necessarily near you. So I will just highlight that to begin with. I live in an area where there's not as many progressive-minded people where I am. So I don't have the same kind of community roots that you guys have where you're at, where there's a lot of people who have an understanding of even energy and these different concepts. The people are here in New Jersey for sure, but we're kind of spread out, and I don't know, we're kind of spread out here. So I think that there's a beautiful balance for me of, okay, I can reach people online, and I've connected with so many people that I'm like, I consider my community. I'm like, oh, here they all are, all just scattered about. But as a body worker, I've definitely, so let me loop into the retreat, because that'll be the best example. So when we were at the retreat, we're doing a lot of conceptual work. So we were teaching and we were doing a lot of energy and emotional work, but it was all very much like, or we were teaching with our mouths, and we were in front of the group of women. And my overwhelming feeling in my body was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to put my hands on everybody. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't I couldn't turn that off. Like, that's how I can help someone, is actually, and I think it's very interesting. That's how I can help someone the most, is if I put my hands on a person. And it can make me cry, honestly, because that's one of my gifts. Like, that's it, not talking and just going into that place and putting my hands on someone is very effective. And so at the retreat, I wanted to touch everybody. I was like, I envisioned myself, I'm like, let's go. I could massage everybody. That wasn't included, and that didn't happen, but I was just like, that's what I wanted to do. So coming home from Tulum, that was a really important realization for me to have. And it sparked my whole re-entrance back into bodywork, which has been kind of like moving slowly, because my son is starting school in September, and I kind of need my schedule to open up and change. And I actually need a space over here to work on people. So I'm aligning with spaces and treatment rooms where I can go and work on people again. But yeah, I think that having both for me is important, and I didn't realize that until I was in person with those women, the 6 women we were with in Tulum.
That's beautiful. And you're bringing massage back into your in-person practice where you live.
Yes. And I feel like it's very funny, because within the last maybe week or 10 days, I've had 3 or 4 inquiries from people just right off of Google, like looking for abdominal pelvic massage. And I'm like, the people are finding me, and I'm like, okay, so they're finding me, and now I just need to create the space and get rolling with that again.
Yeah. So, it sounds like there's a lot of momentum there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. This is something my partner's going through. It's like he's had a whole career in film and musician, and he's doing a cranial sacral training right now, and just seeing like how fulfilling it is for him to like just be there and hold somebody's head. It's like the sweetest thing. It's like that it's like I feel like when you have that gift and it's a part of you, it's not something you can deny or hold back.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear also what's happening as your life as a writer and your dreams of writing a book. What's happening with that?
Oh, Meredith. We're going to go here. Okay. So you've inspired me so much as a writer. So I just want to say that. And I don't know what the last thing I had shared with you about was, but I wrote a book proposal that actually got the attention of my top agent. Within 48 hours of sending it, she got back to me right away. And we actually had a phone call, which if you're looking to get a traditional book deal, for anyone listening who is interested in that, there's different routes to go. But if you want a traditional deal and you want to get a book advance, which is to get paid to write the book, you need an agent. And some people like just are trying to get agents for a long time. Like this could be 6 months, 8 months, like you're querying agents. It's this whole process. And when you're learning about this stuff, at least when I was gearing myself up for like, okay, this could be a long time before I hear back from anybody. I just need to keep keep querying agents. And also I had the perspective or the idea, like I need to get out there and meet people and meet agents or just be connected with people in this world. And so when I heard back from her within 48 hours was like, what? Like, no way. And so we had a phone call, and she's interested in the project. And I can't believe that this is the question. We're going here, because I haven't, for whatever reason, I started working on the changes that I needed to make to the project. And I set myself up. So this is a part of the story. I set myself up income wise so that I wouldn't need to generate income for 5 months. So I launched an offering where I was going to have recurring income for 5 months, and it was more than enough to cover what we needed. And that for me that's my time to do these edits and change this part of the book and work on this project and get it to her and get this thing going. Well, a couple months goes by, like 3 months goes by, 4 months goes by, and now I'm at the end of that offering. So the 5 months that I had allotted to face myself have come and gone. And that is the reality of where I'm at. We are still in connection, and she's still interested in the project. If I'm being fully transparent, I have 150% fear that I've let my chance go, and that I've just said, the universe said yes to me. And I was like, well, great. No, thank you. Yes. So I don't know why the things that we want are the scariest things to us. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And part of me wonders if there's part of me that wonders if, well, maybe Jillian, maybe it wasn't time. Maybe you needed to go through some more things before you actually write this book. Maybe maybe the timing isn't right. And there's another part of me that's like, or you just didn't show up for it. Mm. So that's my honest story about that.
Yeah. Two things are coming to mind. So one thing, when I finished writing my book, I had, besides my editor, I had 2 or 3 people read it through for input. And this one woman, that I wanted people that didn't know me very well. And I met this woman on a retreat I went on, an elder woman who had spent her whole career writing. And I was like, would you be interested in reading my book? And it's kind of vulnerable to ask, because it's a big undertaking to read someone's book and offer feedback. And she read the book and had a ton of edits and comments and things that she gave back to me. And at one, I was so honored that she had really taken the time to give it her life force. And at the same time, I was devastated. I was like, I have worked so hard to get this back, and to be like, nope, actually the top of the mountain is over here. Wow. And I think I needed to just take some time with that, of not even going near it. And it took a calling upon my inner fire to really come back to it, and to be like, no, I can do this. I'm going to come back to this. And so I sat down from the beginning of the book with all of her comments and just started reading the whole thing again through. And I have to say now, looking back at it, that made the book so much better. All the comments that she had made, and all that, it was around the language and different words that I repeatedly used, and how each of the chapters began, and describing dialogue and characters, and so much came through in that one read through that she did. So at the end of the day, I got to decide how much of her input I wanted to take. I took quite a lot of it, and I went through the process of publishing. Maybe if she had read it again, she would have had more things to say, but I was ready to move forward. And that was a really powerful experience, just to learn that Okay, there's some projects we take on life that really take a lot of time. And I totally hear you too on like you're 27, 28.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe there is some more life that wants to be lived for this to really come to its full fruition of like all the things you're going to be learning. I felt that way when my book finally came out. Was that wow, the lessons I was learning in my life right before finishing the book, I was like, oh, I need to somehow weave those in because it was so important. Um, yeah, and there was something else I wanted to say. But yeah, do you have anything you want to share about that?
Just that I'm so inspired by your book because it's so well written. It's
Mm.
beautiful. It's like a complete work of art. I mean, not only did you accomplish what you set out to accomplish, like you just knocked it out of the park. Like I'm a reader, like lifelong reader and a writer, and like reading that book, I just flew through it. It was like a day and a half. I didn't really do
Mm.
much else. I just devoured it. And so I just wanted to share that. And I'm sure that your listeners have heard, all about it and they hear about it, but I'll say it myself. Like if you haven't read Just Be, you have to read it because it's such a wonderful story and it's so well written. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. And today we're recording this interview actually to 1 year ago today. Today's August 22nd. The book was published. So that
wow.
was a big milestone just to be like, okay, it's been out in the world 1 year.
Wow.
I would love to hear, because I know you work a lot with women who experience procrastination, self-sabotage, limiting beliefs. If you were to call in your higher self right now and speak to yourself around where you're at and your next steps and how to nurture yourself through this time, any insight, wisdom, what would she say to you?
Well, she would say to focus on the book and to focus on the project and to just show up to it. And she would say that maybe, and this is interesting, the recent failures that I've been having are indicative of some kind of split of what my heart wants and what I think I have to do to continue on my path and my business journey. And, with a book, it's really interesting because with a book, it's not necessarily an income producing activity. So there's a part of me that's like focusing on the writing and the book and putting a larger percentage of my time and energy into writing the book. It just requires a higher level of trust and belief and faith that I'm supported in what I really want. And that is where I need to go.
Mm.
and and so I guess for anyone listening who is fearful that what they want isn't I don't know, is fearful that the project that they really want to dive into that they're not going to be able to do it or dive into it or have what they need to accomplish it. I think I would say, lean into that trust and that faith even more, and let yourself move into that unknown place of, you know what, even if this doesn't work, if I don't do this, I'm going to be rejecting or denying a part of myself that's really, really, really real and there and speaking. So,
Hmm. I had chills, goosebumps, and hair standing up on my arm. You spoke in the presence of truth.
Yeah. It's good to cry on the, on the
No accident that we were meant to talk today.
Yeah, you're right. 100%.
Yeah, so beautiful. And you are so capable of creating those income streams that you need in the meantime. Like you totally just did that this year, and you can do that again and when you need to. And then yeah, it's just that like as I believe as you step more and more into creating that time and space and devotion into the book, like you're going to learn so much on that journey that is going to be of service to all the clients and women that you serve too.
It's so true. It's so true. I see it mirrored with one of my clients right now. I see it mirrored, the choosing the scary thing. You know, she comes to me and she's like, she wants to choose the scary thing, and it's just so funny how it comes up around us when we're going through it too, especially with our clients. So,
And I think also just really honoring the idea of what you've had and the process of getting there. And like, I think in our culture, we are often so focused on the end result of like it needing to look this way and it needing to, but it sounds like there's an evolution and learning in that journey, and just like being willing to be in that and the discomfort of that and all of that that comes up and all of it. If we can like forgive ourselves too every day, I mean, what an act for all the women who have had big dreams and then didn't follow them all the way and then just have all this guilt. Like we don't need to do that. Can we, how can we step through that with grace too?
yeah, you're so right. You're so right. How can we step through that with grace? How can we, I just want to repeat it, how can we forgive ourselves and release the guilt over it looking a certain way or being a certain way, or maybe our perceived failures or faults or shortcomings, whatever those are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I once had a guest say that our failures, like there's actually no such thing as failure because we tried. And that's actually, when we fail, it's actually a success because we tried.
I love that so much. It feels really relevant and really true. And it feels like a part of the process, an important part of it.
Yeah. Oh, well, so good talking to you. Is there anything else you want to share? Just like what you are excited about in your business right now? Anything that's coming up? Anything how people can connect with you that you'd like to share?
Well, this is really interesting that this is coming through. And I think that what I would be very interested or appreciative of is just if there's anyone listening who needs abdominal massage, the Arvigo technique of my abdominal massage for pelvic healing and, potentially healing birth trauma or healing trauma to the pelvis, or repositioning the uterus or anything with painful menstruation. I'm a practitioner of the Arvigo technique of my abdominal massage, and I'm located in New Jersey, and I'm accepting clients. And I'm also, I travel throughout the year. So I have on my website, I have mapped out, I'll be in this area at this time. And so even if you're another part of the country, maybe I can work on you. And maybe somebody who needs work who can come to see me too. So
Yeah.
that's what feels important. And right now, I also have for those of you who are interested in the money conversation, and I have a free training on my website, and it's called The 3 Unconscious Vows That Limit Your Earning Potential. And it goes through these 3 different blocks that we have to, it's related to our childhood and to its childhood wounds. So it's related to the emotional energetics of the pelvis too. But it's on my website, and I can give you the link, Meredith. I think it's www.jillian-anderson.com/free training /.
Okay.
But I'll send
send it along. I'll include it in the show notes. Yeah. Any closing words? Anything else you want to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, I think I'd like to say, just go and do the big, scary things. And it's not going to feel like you're doing big, scary things every day, but the big, scary things require a day-to-day, as Meredith said, devotion. And so show up for those big, scary things every day and see what happens.
Let's just breathe that in, just feeling our hearts, reconnecting with our body, our breath, tuning into what your heart truly, deeply desires. Getting to be in the container of this conversation today, the authenticity, the vulnerability, the openness, the willingness to grow and to learn. Just seeing what's in your heart that you want to open to and devote yourself to in these coming days, these coming weeks, coming months. Knowing that there are so many other women on this path who understand you and know what you're going through. You're not alone. And with the hope that this conversation and all the conversations on this podcast are of service to you in your highest growth, learning, and ascension. I'll bring my hands to my heart and bow. All my gratitude and blessings to Jillian. Thank you for all your wisdom today. Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.